Hello, I'm Alex, and today on Big Al Books, I'm going to tell you all about my June reading plans, and it's an exciting reading month for two reasons. The first of which is that I'm going to try to accomplish the 30 books in 30 days reading challenge that we all know and love here on BookTube. I've never formally tried this challenge before, so I'm very excited to see how that goes. And secondly, I'm Canadian, and we celebrate Indigenous History Month in the month of June, so I thought that all of the 30 books that I'm reading have to be written by a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit author. So in today's video, I want to show you my TBR so you know when I'm planning on reading, and I also wanted to mention a few video plans that I have for the month of June. I was thinking because I'm reading 30 new books, I thought it would be cool to celebrate 30 books that I have read before and would like to recommend to you. I'm also thinking about doing more frequent review videos throughout the month as I start finishing some of these 30 books. So hopefully I can have more frequent short review videos popping up on my channel throughout the month, and I'm just hoping that we can continue to have this conversation. I think now is such a great time to be doing this, especially I think if you're on social media, you've definitely noticed there are a lot of conversations that are happening right now. And of course, colonization plays a foundational role in creating a lot of this systemic injustice that we're seeing in Canadian society, in American society, and in so many other countries around the world. So I think it is so valuable that we are asking these difficult questions, having these meaningful conversations, and finding ways that we can work together collectively to make some real significant change. I love to see it. But anyway, we came here to talk about books, so let me show you the 30 books that I'm planning on reading this month. And I have actually a few more than 30 because I'm just so excited about all of these books. So I don't know if I can get to them all, but I am going to try my best. So let's start off by talking about some nonfiction reads. So for memoirs, I have two memoirs. One of them is by an author who I have read and have always enjoyed. She is one of my true favorites. And this is Bobbi Lee, Indian Rebel, and it's by Maracle. This is actually a kind of difficult book to get your hands on, so I was super thrilled to find this at a thrift store for a reasonable price. And this is a memoir that is looking back on Maracle's life when she was living in Vancouver in, I think, the 1960s. And as you can see from the cover, she's just a total badass. So I'm excited to learn about her life. And then the second memoir I'd like to read is Nitisanak by Lindsay Nixon. All I know about this one is that it is punk and it is queer, and that's all I need to know to get excited about it. Next up, I have three nonfiction books that kind of address literary topics. The first one of these is Shapes of Native Nonfiction, Collected Essays by Contemporary Writers, which was edited by Elissa, Washuta, and Theresa, Warburton. Now, this is a book I actually tried ordering a year ago, but my order got canceled and my book never showed up, but it has finally made its way into my life, and I'm so excited about it. From what I understand, the authors are structuring this book around the art of basket weaving, which I know nothing about, and I've read a few of the authors whose voices are collected in here, but so many of them will be new to me, so I'm really hoping that I can discover some new authors after reading this. I've also got The Truth About Stories by Thomas King. This is part of the CBC Massey Lecture series, and this is going to be all about oral storytelling. Also, on a similar note, I have Memory Serves, Oratories by Maracle, and this is a collection of lectures that she has spoken over the years, and it's all about the importance of the oral tradition, which I think is an important topic to address because in these Euro-Western societies, there's such a value placed on the written word, right? Like our laws and our great books, and I think that Maracle is going to add a very valuable perspective as to why the oral tradition matters as well. Next up, I have two philosophic books that relate to the topic of natural science. The first one of these is Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and I have only heard glorious things about this book. Everyone who reads this seems to love it. I've heard that it is informative and generous and just a truly wonderful read. And then I also have Tsawalk, a Nuu-chah-nulth Worldview by E. Richard Atleo. This is a work of philosophy that is exploring topics related to reality, spirituality, and living in more harmony with nature, and it looks beautiful. The last set of nonfiction books that I have to tell you about are ones that are more political in nature. I think some of these books are addressing history and some of them are addressing more current issues. So the first one of these is Dancing on Our Turtle's Back, Stories of Nishnabeg, Recreation, Resurgence, and a New Emergence. This is by Leanne Betasamosake Simpson, who is one of my favorite authors, and from what I understand, this book is exploring reconciliation and making the argument that any kind of true change needs to involve political resurgence, as well as helping out with the regeneration of Indigenous languages and culture. So probably going to be another fabulous read by her. Next is The Truth That Wampum Tells by Lynn Gehl. I think this one is going to be exploring some early Canadian history and then connecting that history to present day land claims and the self-government process. So I'm sure it shall be very informative. And then I have Red Skin, White Masks, Rejecting the Colonial Politics of Recognition by Glen Coulthard. And this is a work of political theory that is exploring decolonization and how nations can go about doing that in a more meaningful way. Then I also have Peace, Power, Righteousness, and Indigenous Manifesto by Tsawalk Alfred, and this is again another work of political theory, and this one is arguing in favor of self-determination and how that can become a reality. And then the last political work that I have is The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee by David Truer, and this is actually still a pretty new release. I think it came out last year, and this is Native America from 1890 to the present. Now, I tend to read mostly works that are addressing Canadian history, but I always do want to learn about what's happening more in the United States, and this work is of course responding to Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, which covered some earlier historical events, and I have read that one, so it would be really cool to read this as kind of a follow-up, because Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee is very pessimistic in tone, and it kind of acts as if everything ended for Indigenous people in 1890, which of course is not the case. There are many years of history in between. There's been a lot of resilience and resurgence and survival, and I think David Truer is here to set the record straight, so I'm hoping to learn some more about more contemporary topics with this one. So that's it for my nonfiction TBR, so let's move on now to the novels that I plan on reading. I have two books that are in an Indigenous epic fantasy trilogy, and that's called The Way of Thorn and Thunder. They're written by Daniel Heath Justice, and I read the first book in this trilogy back maybe like 2 years ago, and I never continued on with reading, so I have to reread that first book, but then I'm hoping that I can get to these other two in the trilogy. These works are very cool in that it's kind of presenting the story of colonization, but in this very fun, imaginative fantasy kind of setting, so very cool reads. And then I've got Midnight Sweat Lodge by Wabgashig Rice, and this is actually a novella because, you know, if you're doing 30 books in 30 days, you best hope that some of them are going to be on the shorter side. And he's an author I've been meaning to try for a while. I think this is about a group of strangers who get together and have a ceremony in a sweat lodge that is a very transformative experience. Next up is Keeper and Me by Richard Wagamese. He is one of my favorites, and he's yet to disappoint me. So I kind of save his novels so that I don't burn through them too quickly, and this is one I've been looking to for a long time. This one is about a boy who has been taken from his home and placed into foster care, and how that affects his life afterwards. Actually, when I look down at this pile, most of these novels are written by authors who I've already read before, and I've been excited to continue on with reading them. So I have two books by Thomas King, and the first one of these is Truth and Bright Water, and the second one is Medicine River. And then I have Tracks by Louise Erdrich. Usually in the month of June, I treat myself to reading one of her books, and I always enjoy the experience, so I'm excited to continue exploring more of her fiction. Next up, I have Bloodsports by Eden Robinson. She's again another favorite of mine, and this one is described as being the riveting, gritty story of the brutal cat and mouse relationship between two cousins set in Vancouver's downtown east side. So this one sounds like it could be intense. And then finally, from authors who I've already read before, This is The Girl Who Grew a Galaxy by Cherie Dimaline. Now, she's an author who kind of made it famous when her book The Marrow Thieves came out, so I'm excited to see more from her back catalog, and I really bought this book because it was blurbed on the front by Maracle and Thompson Highway on the back and Daniel Heath Justice. So those are all authors who I admire, so seeing their names on here sold it for me for sure. And then I also have two books that are by authors who I have not read before, and these are both relatively new releases. I think this one came out last year, and this one is new for this year. So the first one of these is Crow Winter, and it's by Karen McBride. And I believe this one is about a girl who returns home to her reservation, and she gets involved with some strange happenings involving a crow. Don't know more than that. And then there's Five Little Indians by Michelle Good. I'm anticipating this one to be an intense read because it's about 5 girls who survive residential school together, and I think it's about their life afterwards and how that experience affects them and sets them all on different paths. So I am expecting a very powerful read out of this one. And then I've also got 2 short story collections that I'm interested in reading this month. One of them is called One Good Story, That One, and it's by Thomas King. Once again, Thomas King makes another appearance on this TBR. And I already know that I like one of the stories in this collection because I've been teaching it for the past few years, and I think it's just a great story. And the other collection is The Stone Collection by Kateri Akiwenzi Dam. She's an author that I wanted to check out because her name pops up a lot. She's involved in a lot of projects that I've heard of, but I've never read a collection of just her own writing, so I'm excited to give this a try. And then for plays, I have 2 plays by Thompson Highway that I'd like to get to. One of them's a reread for me, and that is The Res Sisters. This one is about a group of 7 women who are trying to find a way to get to Toronto to participate in the greatest bingo in the world. And he also has another play that I haven't read, and that is Dry Lips Oughta Move to Caboose Casing. And I think that both of these plays are set on the same fictional reserve, and this book explores female characters, and this book explores male characters and hockey. So I'm curious to see how these 2 books read in comparison to each other. And then I have 4 works of poetry that I would like to read this month. The first one of these is Witness I Am by Gregory Schofield. This one seems like it's going to be intense because I think it is taking on the topic of missing and murdered Indigenous women. So that is going to be a heavy collection for sure. And then I have Indian Coping Mechanisms by Billy Ray Belcourt. I read his debut poetry collection last year and I was really impressed by it. This one seems like it's a bit more exploratory with the structure of the poetry he's writing. There's also some photographs in this collection, so I'm curious to see what this will end up being like. And then, once again, we have a Maracle appearance. This is Hope Matters, and this is a poetry collection that she wrote with her daughters, Kalumpa Bob and Tanya Carter. So I'm very excited to see what this mother and her 2 daughters will put together. Looks like it's going to be a beautiful collection. And then the last poetry collection I have is When My Brother Was an Aztec by Natalie Diaz. She's an author that I've been wanting to check out for a long time. I've heard such great things about these poems. They are haunting and they are powerful, apparently, and I'm looking forward to exploring that. And then finally, to wrap up this video, I have 3 graphic novels that I'm hoping to read this month. Now, one of these has not been released yet, and that will be the new installment in the Wendy series by Walter Scott. I think this is set to come out in the middle of the month, so I'm hoping I can get my hands on a copy of it so that I can read it before the month ends. But the Wendy comic series is one of my favorites. It follows this girl who is trying to make it in the Montreal art scene, and it is hilarious because she is such a disaster. She makes a lot of tragic decisions, and there's also a lot of jokes at the expense of the pretentious artists that she hangs out with, and I think these comics are brilliant, and I'm so excited to get another installment in this series. And next up, I have 2 books that are written by the same author, and that is Michael Nicol Yagulanis, and these are described as being Haida manga. So the first one is Carpe Fin, And the second one I have is A Tale of Two Shamans. I think this one is taking on a traditional tale, so I'm very excited to see. The artwork in these books looks very intriguing. So that's it for my list of the 30 books I'd like to read in 30 days. I'm looking forward to updating you throughout the month to let you know how this challenge is going. But thanks so much for checking out this video, and I hopefully will see you again throughout the month as we continue to celebrate all the wonderful Indigenous literature that there is out there. Thanks so much for checking out this video. Take care.